Thank you, colleagues, for joining. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session on rethinking waste management by shifting our focus upstream. I'm Xin, Regional Technical Specialist for Chemicals and Waste from Bangkok Regional Hub. I'll be moderating today's discussion. So first, I would like to give the floor to Alex and Akiko, whom I believe you know very well. But in case you don't know them, they're both team leaders. They're team leaders. Alex is the team leader of innovation team, and Akiko leads the environment and energy team. Both are co-chairs of the circular economy task team at BRH. Maybe over to Alex first.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Shin, and really great to see everyone online. We are trying maybe a bit late, but kick off 2025 in force for our joint circular economy efforts. We treat whatever task force does at BRH as a joint effort with the country offices, because this is where the real action happens, and this is where we learn, and this is where we design and implement together. Just a very short note for those who don't know, the task force was established last year at BRH to drive regional programming effort at circular economy. It is co-chaired by Akiko and myself, but includes representatives from across relevant teams from BRH, from across GPN. The purpose of the task force is to collectively drive joint coherent proposition on circular economy, support and work jointly with the country offices on learning what's new, testing new approaches and new ideas, and offering new partnership venues in the field, in the country offices, but also at the regional level. It also for us a way to start looking into the areas that were falling away for some time from our circular economy work, and start building towards our narrative articulates around circular economy transition. As part of this, we have had strategy workshop last year together with a few country office colleagues to arrive at the joint framing and direction for where we want to take this work forward. Louisa will, just for your information, will project those key areas. I will not go too much into detail of it. We will share also the narrative with everyone hopefully next week. It's being kind of cleared with our communication, but importantly, what we posit together collectively, not just BRH task force, but collectively with the country offices for UNDP to advance circular economy transition, we need a concerted effort across generation and emergence of new market, much more holistic resource management across the whole value chain, a very different entrepreneurial role of the state through policy regulation, through public procurement, through different incentive and investment programs, a finance space that is not limited to financing or funding successful startups or economic enterprises, but something that links together public, private, and blended finance to drive economic transition on the ground. And obviously, not least important, it's about building a social movement, shifting mindset and behaviors of people, both as consumers and citizens, to support circular economy transition agenda. And it all is supported by few important enablers, which is about inclusive partnerships, technology, and innovation. Again, this is not things that were concocted overnight in Bangkok. These are the things that were co-designed together with our colleagues from the 6 country offices that you can see on the screen. But it obviously is something that is not just with them, but that aims to support the whole region and to engage all the country offices in the region. As part of this work, we have set up a community of practice that is facilitated by Louise and Shin. The purpose of this community of practice is twofold. The one is, of course, knowledge sharing. What we see, there are a lot of assets and a lot of successes and interesting projects happening across the region in UNDP. Those often are not fully visible, transparent to other colleagues. So we obviously want to build that visibility and transparency, make sure that everyone can really learn from the best, meaning from successes of each other, but also possibly failures or insuccesses where things might have not worked. We will also be bringing external speakers to inspire UNDP to push the boundaries further. But obviously, we will not limit ourselves just to webinars and exchanges, but the more theoretical conceptual part will be supported by more practical hands-on clinics that will be following more of a kind of a theoretical conceptual learning part that we will be doing. So we are kind of will try to keep the sequence of doing one engagement together with you per month. Again, we are very, very open to hear back what we can improve as we go ahead, what would be interesting topics to surface and to bring in, how to make our future case clinics more interactive and helpful for you to use this stuff for the programs and projects that you are putting in practice on the ground, but also the way how you engage partners from the government, private sector, philanthropies, and so forth. So that perhaps would be a framing from us, from the region where we are starting and where we want to go. I will ask my counterpart, Akiko, to complement or correct if I miss anything or say something inappropriate. So please do correct me. But over to you, Akiko. Yes.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'll always compliment. And then thank you very much for the good morning, good afternoon, or even sometimes maybe in lunchtime for some colleagues. But thank you very much for your participation in this workshop, and then especially India country office, Philippine countries. Thank you very much for sharing your experience in advance. Just to really compliment a few points about what Alex already said it very well. So we the BRH really saw the circular economy as a good thematic topic where many different parts of UNDP can work together to strengthen the impact of various relevant work that we are already engaged in related to the circular economy. So when we look at the circular economy, there are the different country offices engaged in with government or municipalities or subnational governments differently on different topics. It could be waste management, it could be the plastic, it could be portfolio approach, it could be more the link related to the financing. But at the end of the day, we really would like to contribute to this transformative shift from the linear to circular economy, as Alex said. And for that, I think we really need to join forces. So yes, waste or plastic, waste management and plastic related work largely sit within the environment and energy team, and largely in chemicals and waste hub when it comes to the vertical fund financed work. But then it also sit a large number of projects also sit in country offices that are not necessarily funded through vertical funds. The country offices colleagues manage to initiate those initiatives and implement them either through country office resources or bilateral partnership or many other things. And then the portfolio approach, that some country offices are working with the innovation team, with Alex and his team. And then again, maybe other discussions happening on the more financing side, but somehow we really need to connect these dots. And we also would like to make sure while we were connecting dots and then strengthening this UNDP's relevance, UNDP's comparative advantage and value addition, and in this shift to circular economy, we would like to ensure it's a two-way street of information and communication, knowledge sharing. It's not everything is coming from headquarters or region and all country offices. It's multiple directions of information sharing and even the strategic discussions. So to do that, we felt having a little node in the regional hub would be helpful, so that our strategic discussion is still, and the thought leadership will be still very much evidence-based, very much action-oriented. It's not just the theoretical discussions to position UNDP corporately at a very global level discussions or international negotiation level discussions. So that's how we see, and we strive to be to contribute this effort. And therefore, so this is why those community of practices and at the regional level, as well as this webinar is those the examples of those don't know how to like stimulate the information sharing and the knowledge management. I noticed that even beyond this region, that there are a few discussions and webinars or exchange of information happening related to the circular economy. I attended yesterday very, very, very interesting webinar, for example, on the circularity in PV, the renewable energy and PV panels organized from the Copenhagen. And so we would like to also connect if we see any external experts or any discussions happening very interesting in other parts of the UNDP outside of this region. We would also like to be a conduit to bring these things together and to learn to learn more together, and then to move together for I think better delivery of impacts, even those activities are delivered through projects. Okay, I think it's better that I give the floor back to you and Shin, and then we'll leave as much time as possible to this the presentations and discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, Akiko, and thank you to Alex. So I guess before we officially start, just to share very quickly the 3 principles of circular economy defined by Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which I like to quote very often. Circular economy is about eliminate waste and pollution, which means that we really need to address inefficiency at the source, not just manage waste at the end. We need to circulate products and materials. This can be achieved by designing systems that keep materials in use for as long as possible. We also need to regenerate nature. This means that circular economy can restore ecosystems and ensure resources use doesn't really degrade the environment. And you can see that from those 3 principles, circular economy at its core is about resource efficiency, meaning maximizing the value of materials while minimizing waste. But too often, waste management is seen just as something that starts after a product is discarded, rather than something that should be designed into the way we produce, use, and recover materials. And that's why I guess for me, it's very important to share this with colleagues that sound waste management also doesn't start at its disposal. It starts at the point where resources enter the economy. The waste hierarchy also has a clear guidance on this. Reducing waste should be the top priority before we even consider reuse, recycling, or disposal. But much of the conversation around waste still centers really on end-of-life management rather than preventing waste from being created in the first place. So that's why in this session, we would like to hear from UNDP colleagues in India and the Philippines who have tested resource management approach in different contexts. And we had the pleasure of having Pradibha from UNDP India and also Gwen from UNDP Philippines to share their experience. Pradibha has over 12 years of experience in the waste and circular economy sector. She specializes in implementing citywide decentralized waste management initiatives while also advocating for the social inclusion of waste workers. Gwen also is a program analyst at UNDP Philippines, where she leads a portfolio encompassing circular and green economy, energy transition, sustainable transportation, and broader climate action. So I would like to maybe invite Pradibha first to introduce your work on Material Recovery Facility, also known as MRF, And maybe from there, for colleagues who are not really familiar with the term, we can understand why we're talking about MRF and why do they matter to the work on circular economy. So over to you, Pradeepa.
Sure. Thank you, Zin, for the warm introduction, and thank you very much to Akiko, Alex, and the team for organizing this and for really setting the context. And it's very exciting to share some of the work that we have done in the country and also use the opportunity to learn from the colleagues and network present here. So, Zin, if I may be allowed, I would like to just share my screen in order to give some context of what material recovery facilities are. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, for colleagues, everybody working in the circular economy, this is one term we keep coming across, material recovery facility. By definition, these are, the kind of facility which helps in processing both segregated, unsegregated kind of materials into valuable commodities, which can be given as feedstock for recyclers. As part of the critical function that they play, they help us in reducing landfill volumes, overall also support ULBs or the urban local bodies disposal cost, and also provide opportunity for employment to the formal and informal waste workers who are employed in the sector. In terms of operators, and this is something, if I may speak from an Indian point of view, the operators usually has been, given out to the private firms or CSOs, NGOs, enterprises who manage these material recovery facilities. But by definition and as per the responsibility, set by the various, rules and regulations in the country, it's the primary responsibility of the local body to run and manage this MRF and ensure that it meets the, the required function that it is supposed to play. There have been various policies in the country which has supported the development and maintenance of material recovery facilities. For instance, we have solid waste management rules, plastic waste management rules. There is also a campaign called Clean India campaign, which we are in the second phase of its implementation. And there has been huge budget outlay that has also been set up for, setting up this material recovery facilities as part of our SWM improvements and urban sanitation plan. So with respect to how we have worked, with respect to the work that UNDP India has done over the last 5 years in around material recovery facility. So this was largely started in 2018 when, the country was still experimenting with, different forms of EPR policy that was still in its organic stage, and it was in the process of development. At that time, they partnered with various private sector organizations like Coca-Cola, Unilever, HDFC Bank, who came forward to support the urban local bodies in terms of their collection and improving the infrastructure of the city. So this is how a typical model of operation for the country office has been, wherein we implemented some 35 MRs across the country. So UNDP partnered with the central government, and this includes the nodal ministries, pollution control board, policy think tank, and also act as a convening body, between the city implementation partner, municipal corporation, private sector, as well as the ministry. A governance structure was set in place to monitor and see the progress of this material recovery facilities. So these MRFs were then playing a key role in ensuring there is active recycler linkage, there is proper, material inflow that's coming to the center, the data traceability and management is done at the center level, and then the value addition happens to the material. Very briefly, this is a typical material recovery facility. Of course, it would vary from different sizes and processing capacity and different kind of MRF. For instance, we have some MRFs which are as basic as, taking care of 3 to 5 metric tons per day to 20 metric tons per day. So based on the size, land availability, the amount of waste that is generated in that particular city, different MRFs are set up, and demarcations are done in the various urban local bodies development plan. So I'm just showing a typical feature of what this Swachhta Kendra, what we used to call in the country office, basically used to do. So it used to act as an epicenter for collaboration between all the different stakeholders in the waste value chain ecosystem. So the MRF would coordinate with bulk waste generator, with municipal collection systems, with itinerant buyers, informal waste pickers, etc., and would bring the material to the MRF. That's where the various value addition would then happen. These are some of the pictures from various machineries, etc., that were set up at the MRF. And yeah, and maybe then I can talk about more learnings later, but just want to situate how MRFs function and how it looked like in the Indian landscape. So I'll pause for a while here. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pradeepa. I would like to now invite Gwen to also introduce the work done in the Philippines on circular economy. And I believe that MRFs were also established and piloted in the Philippines as well.
Checking if you can see my screen. Is it full now?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And good to see also colleagues from the Philippines joining this call. So maybe just to provide a bit of context before I go into the actual MRF work. I guess same with most countries, especially in the region, we're actually challenged when it comes to significant waste generation and low recycling rate and inadequate infrastructure, which leads also to increased landfill dependency and pollution. And the Philippines has always been tagged as one of the largest contributors to marine plastic waste, and with Pasig River being one of the most polluted globally. In the country, we have quite a lot of comprehensive policies, actually. One of which is the Solid Waste Management Act, which mandates local government units or LGUs to establish the materials recovery facilities. Although many remain underutilized, serving only as sorting facilities rather than actually providing like value-adding activities also. And we're also struggling with weak enforcement, lack of investment, and limited market demand for recovered materials, which also hindered waste management, effectiveness of waste management, but also the circular economy adoption. And this is the case really for most local government units, including Pasig City, one of the highly urbanized cities within Metro Manila. So recognizing these challenges, actually, we initiated the circular economy work in 2019. This is together also with the regional innovation team, and of course the accelerator lab, where we looked into shifting from piecemeal efforts in terms of waste management solutions to a more systemic and portfolio-based approach to drive structural transformation towards a circular economy. And here we did our first pilot with Pasig City, where we co-developed a circular economy portfolio with the local government and stakeholders, using the systemic design approach to identify leverage points and interventions. Here we saw that the potential when it comes to seeing MRFs also differently, and innovation, the innovation for circular economy hub emerged as one of the leverage points as part of the CE portfolio. So where we looked into reimagining the materials recovery facility as creative hubs and collaboration spaces for circular economy. And our starting hypothesis then was that if MRFs are redesigned as innovation hubs they can demonstrate a new economic model that fosters ways to resource transformation, entrepreneurship, and also behavioral shifts. And also with support from our previous projects, including the GSB-funded ACE project, we did a feasibility study and initial design of the ICE hub, defining also the key components, including the infrastructure operational model for the ICE hub. So this is the one of the original designs where we connect also with different MRFs. So the ICE hub will serve as the aggregator, but also connecting with the other MRFs and other facilities also within the city. Around that same time also, Pasig City transitioned from private waste collection to limited direct LGU management. So they're able to lease a large warehouse that serve as the foundation also for the ICE hub. And seeing that there's strong stakeholder interest, including from homeowners association, civil society, private sector, and even development partners, the LGU began constructing the ICE hub last year using their own resources. So here I just wanted to show you the current state of the ICE hub. It's still very much evolving, still very much work in progress, but it has already demonstrated some transformative potential. So here you could see that late last year, the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed visited ICE hub, where she also highlighted the potential in terms of securing green jobs and empowering women through CE interventions. And the hub here processes recyclables like plastics, glass, and textiles, converting them into new products such as chairs, bags, tiles, and clothing. Here, it also provided space for local entrepreneurs, especially women-led businesses that use the ICE hubs, shared facilities and equipment to develop and showcase the circular products also. Another feature here is a partnership with a local private sector company, Bio. It's a clothing company, which also established a harvest hub within the ICE hub, which focused on sustainable textile production and providing trainer for local weavers. Also would like to mention that other local government units and stakeholders have been visiting the ICE hub for Pasig for further benchmarking with some LGUs now actually planning on developing their own innovation hubs or even circular economy parks. And also strengthening the integration of circular economy in their own portfolio. Here just to show you, so again, the ICE hub is still very much work in progress, but we have now this EU-funded green economy program where we're continuing the support for Pasig City when it comes to expanding and strengthening the functionality of the ICE hub. We're also under this program, we're supporting 20 other LGUs, which would have potential in terms of adopting the same model. So the focus here is really looking into the operationalization of the ICE hub, which would also be tied with other portfolio components, including establishing key policies such as green public procurement ordinance, revisiting the tax incentives so that it would be favorable for circular economy activities, and also introducing waste to resource technologies and ensuring the adoption of CE policies. We're also helping them in crafting a much broader local circular economy policy. And then also, of course, part of this is promoting behavioral change, business mentorship for women, for Gen Z groups, and informal waste workers, and also expanding the ICE hub's production capabilities, including providing equipment, machines, tools, and also creating new products that is more marketable, and also tracking the progress through digital waste collection systems and in support of EPR compliance reporting. And maybe just to mention that there's potential as part of the ISOP and also the broader CE portfolio in Pasig City in terms of supporting the EPR implementation. It's still very new in the Philippines, and the focus is still very much on the downstream, but the EPR law also provides for upstream interventions. But there's a big role for local government units in terms of influencing how private companies are designing and implementing their EPR programs, and the ISUB could actually be leveraged as part of that. And maybe just to quickly show here that since it's still being enhanced, this is actually the new design. This is the new design developed by the local government unit, which they hope to also maybe apply or operationalize within the year or by next year. So maybe I'll stop there. Yeah, but just wanted to show the, I guess, the forward-looking vision also of the local government in terms of further transforming the ISOB. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pradeepa and Gwen, especially for showing us the circular economy hub that's going to be built. We're a little bit jealous here, honestly. We're just checking that beautiful, layout of the new hub. And thank you very much for also mentioning some of the upcoming or existing policies implemented in the Philippines. That's actually one of the questions I would like to ask both of you. So maybe to Pradeepa, I think that we've heard how material recycling facilities can contribute to material recovery, but their impact doesn't really exist in isolation. So the effectiveness of MRFs and even broader circular economy efforts really depend on the policies and regulations that shape them. And Gwen has already mentioned EPR, for example, as a policy tool that can potentially support enhanced resource efficiency. I'm wondering in India whether if you observe anything, because I know that EPR is also implemented in India. Are there any other policies that you think could also support the circular economy efforts and the MRF business model? So over to you, Pradeepa.
Thanks, Zin. That's a very important question. I would like, while I was emphasizing there is at a federal level, there is one, there are a couple of policies, right, from the National Solid Waste Management Rules, Plastic Waste Management Rules. EPR is part of the Plastic Waste Management Rules, and similarly, which comes under the larger Environmental Protection Act, which is the federal policy and regulation mechanism. However, each state and each city has been quite decentralized in the way they are implementing these programs. And in the cities where, the MRFs have been really institutionalized well in the cities functioning, or, in terms of, its sustainability or receiving the materials of good quality, that has largely been driven on what kind of bylaws the city municipal corporation have. So for instance, I will give you examples of some big cities like the tier 1, tier 2 cities, which has embedded certain incentives and certain kind of policies in place. Like in Pune, which is one of the city in the western part of the country, all the households that were constructed after 2000, they were asked to develop an in situ composting pit. So which by mandatory for any new real estate, any new builders, society, they will have to design an in situ composting plan as part of their solid waste management system. As a result, what happened, the citizens were then forced to, manage the organics part of it at the city, at the building level, or at the source of generation. And the second good policy that happened in the city is where a cooperative of waste pickers signed an MOU with the Pune City Municipal Corporation for integrating waste pickers in the door-to-door waste collection program. As a result, 60 to 70% of the entire city waste collection was then covered by waste picker. This not only led to direct citizens accountability and engagement with waste picker, increased livelihood, improved dignity, but also better quality of waste that was coming to the MRF. So for instance, India is still, we are still a long way to go when it comes to source segregation. And that's something many cities are working. There are different partners, development partners, grassroots organizations who are working on the source segregation part of the of the problem, and this is where the behavior change really kicks in. Similarly, we have examples from Bangalore where a strict policy regulation on source segregation and implementation of dry waste collection center in the city that has led to again some 34 dry waste collection centers in the Bangalore city is now being managed by different waste entrepreneurs, who are again waste picker based organizations. In Bombay, for instance, in the city where I was implementing the program for last 5 years, we again had a very unique policy in terms of giving citizens property tax rebate to encourage them to do rainwater harvesting, composting, source segregation kind of practices. So we see wherever there are this, while the operation of MRF will require a whole ecosystem approach, but wherever there have been these nudges or good policy enforcement, the MRFs have really they have performed well, both in terms of supply of materials as well as creating demand for more such systems to be part of the plan. So these are a few examples from the cities here in India. Yeah.
Pradeep, I think that's really helpful to really understand how things were done, right? Even if I think once you have those facilities established, there are a lot of work that you need to do to make sure that MRFs can function well. So maybe over to Gwen. I think besides from some of the policies that you mentioned, are there any other things that you think that could really make the work go more smoothly? For example, in terms of technology, data collection, or new infrastructure, are there any other things that you picked up that you believe would contribute to the circular economy work that you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Shin. Maybe also still linked with EPR, because now the stakeholders here are still exploring what is exactly the role of local government units, or even local stakeholders, or even waste diverters in the whole EPR scheme. But I think everyone, well, at least most stakeholders actually agree that local governments do play a big role and can actually act as waste diverters, but they have to be also ready. They need to have systems in place, including the tracking of the waste that is being collected, because it's actually necessary for EPR auditing also. So they need to have very accurate, verifiable data that can be used by OEs, PROs when it comes to their EPR auditing. So that's what we're doing in support of the LGUs in terms of helping them establish this data tracking system so that they can also use it as leverage also for EPR. But another exciting development actually is I think just this year the new public procurement law has just been passed, which now strongly integrates environmental sustainability when it comes to procuring goods by public offices, by government, both at national and local level. So we see this as a potential game changer, especially for circular, sustainable products and businesses, right? Because reality is it's still hard for them to compete in terms of the mainstream I guess market because the cost is still quite high. Of course, it has to be tied with incentives. There should be measures to lower the production costs also from the private sector actually doing circular economy practices. But the new procurement law is also part of that is the green public procurement could actually create opportunities for circular businesses to access market, which is actually one of the biggest is the government, right? So because at this point they're having challenge when it comes to actually bidding. I just heard also from many private sector companies, especially the smaller ones, that they're not able to compete with some of these companies because they cannot really offer a much lower price, and still the current state is government would still base their decision on the lowest cost, not so much on the environmental sustainability. But of course, that's still yet to be operationalized. Hopefully, that can be operations very soon. But we're still seeing some potential challenges in terms of the requirements because this might require life cycle analysis, which may not be as easy to comply with when it comes to the smaller enterprises. But yeah, hopefully support will be provided to them also so that they can take advantage of this new opportunity and access market also.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Gwen. I think you summarized pretty well. When it comes to circular economy, there are a lot of things that we need to do, right? For example, like the standards on what can be considered as circular products. I think like most of the countries, they say that, oh, let's prioritize the procurement of circular products. But then when it comes to the nitty-gritty part, people often say that, oh, what can be defined really as circular? And then, for example, you also mentioned enforcement, data collection. When you have EPR in place, you have to make sure that the companies really follow what they promised under the EPR system. And that takes a lot of data collection, monitoring, evaluation. So there's really tons of work surrounded around those. So I guess maybe this is time for us to take some of the questions from the floor. I see there's this one question from Lin. Her question is also sharing like her experience in Vietnam. Only recycling facilities are eligible to receive funding from EPR scheme, which facilities that solely sort plastic waste are not. So how do country offices in India and the Philippines promote MRFs to become official PROs or relevant entities to receive funding from EPR? I'm not sure whether Pradeepa or Gwen have.
Yes, it is come from Linh, Vietnam. Very nice to meet you, colleague. Yeah.
Thank you. I should have, just give the floor to you so you can ask the question directly. But I hope do you have anything to add, Lynn?
No, that's okay. That's all my question here. I just want to clarify that the PRO here is packaging recycling organization, but I'm not sure in the EPR scheme in your country whether PRO are mentioned or relevant entities are eligible to receive funding from EPR. Yep, that's over from my side.
Should I maybe invite Pradeepa to share your insights on this first?
Sure. Thanks, Lynn. Nice to meet you here. And so, Zin, in terms of what EPR, how the EPR funding can come to the MRFs. In fact, that's something we also started our program with, wherein we wanted to explore that if there is an EPR funds available, can it be used to strengthen the urban local bodies? And that means around collection, infrastructure, maybe development of ecosystems and building capacities of the on-ground partners. But on the contrary, what has happened, the way EPR has evolved in the country, that has been very market based mechanism, system wherein the brands and the various companies are required to work directly with recyclers now, and whatever target that has been set for these brands, which is based on the calculations of how much product they put out in the market, and this is usually regulated by a central pollution control board. And so it's usually it's become a trade wherein the recyclers and the brands, they work together. So now, to ensure whether the recyclers and how they work with MRF, that will depend on what kind of connections these recyclers have with the MRFs that's functioning on ground. So we have MRFs of different scale and sizes in the country. There are, which you would say they cater to the tier 4 and tier 3 kind of recyclers. So this would be, say, waste pickers or small aggregators. They are the one who come and sell the material to the MRF. And whereas the recyclers deal with large volume of material. So it's a lot of those connections and market linkages. And, when we did a study of around 10 MRFs in the country, we realized that not all partners are able to utilize this EPR funding that's available to them. And this means for, and I mean, this could be for many reasons. One, because MRFs are designed to solve the problem of the city, at least in India, right? They are not necessarily very specialized or a specific stream of material MRF. So we do have MRFs which are, for instance, only focusing on plastic or only focusing on, the dry, high value components of the inorganic waste. But in most cases, since the ULB is giving out their land, they are giving access to the waste, to the city's waste, they are giving a certain infrastructure. The MRFs also need to solve the entire part of the problem of waste management and not just one specific. And that's where we see a lot of disconnect happening due to contamination in the material that comes in the waste. It's also very inconsistent. For instance, you would see the material that would vary even seasonally, depending upon how the consumption of different plastic material. For instance, in Bombay, where it rains very heavily and people take local transport, metros a lot for local commute, they use this thin plastic sleeves to save their mobile phones or various kind of personal belongings. And suddenly we would see those kind of material which would really increase during the monsoon season, whereas in summer the high consumption of PET would lead to more PET bottle that's coming to the center. So I think there have been various factors on, and it will totally depend on what kind of arrangement or who is the operator of MRF in these various cities and in settings. So I don't know, Lynn, I think it's a quite long answer to your question, but if I was able to share some parts on how MRFs are functioning and connecting with PROs in the country.
Yes, please. Thank you for that. So I understand that from the EPR fund at the national level, they will decentralize to EPR fund at cities or provincial level. So from that, they will depend on the local authorities. They will distribute. They can consider to distribute the EPR fund for the MRF at the local, right?
Correct. Yeah, because there is no obligation as such from the EPR policy to engage with MRF.
Yeah. So that is also the factor that UNDP Vietnam are trying to promote. We call that the inclusive EPR. So we also work with Monre here in Vietnam to support, to develop like a guideline and the operation on how we can utilize the EPR funds efficiently.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Perhaps, Shen, if I can just add, I think for the Philippines, the model is also quite different because we don't have the centralized EPR fund. The government doesn't actually get much funds coming from the OEs or PROs, aside from, of course, the registration fees or the penalties later on that will be charged to them. But I think there's because it's very much decentralized. So it's up to the obliged enterprises or the large enterprises and the PROs. There's no single PRO here, so it's also quite complicated in that sense. Because anyone can be a PRO, and they have to work with large enterprises, right? And then they're the ones going to implement the EPR programs. But because currently what's happening is for majority of the waste that is being collected, they get it from the MRFs, from the junk shops, for free. Because for local government units, for MRFs, their priority is to get rid of all this collected waste. But now we're trying to help them see the potential to actually earn from the EPR implementation, where they can also negotiate some fees, even local government units. So that's something that we're actually working on. So I guess the key here is really to capacitate, empower MRFs, the local stakeholders, to be able to negotiate with OEs and PROs so that they can access I guess some benefits, economic benefits from that, aside from just getting rid of the collected waste.
Yeah, thank you, Wen.
Thank you very much. I see that Harpreet also put 2 questions in the chat. Maybe Harpreet, would you like to comment directly and ask those 2 questions? And Akiko also said that she has a very similar question. So
sure. No, thanks. Thanks, Pratibha and Gwen, for the excellent presentation. I think I've written down my questions, and Akiko said she has similar questions. So Akiko, I don't know if you want to come and add on to that. I'm also just conscious of the time. And I know these are not easy answers, so maybe we can continue the conversation later also. Thanks.
Yes. Maybe just hear me. Oh, okay. Just a quick addition to that. Well, it's not the exactly the same, but then I just want to touch upon the existing environmental or social standards that that we find in the countries that we operate is and then its impact on this on the effectiveness of circular economy practice, because the models and the circular economy models developed in an EU, most of the things are coming from the EU and other places. It kind of assumes that already that this is operated within the already high standards on environment and social concerns, that be the human rights or the occupational health, the considerations or environment considerations. And so in that kind of, high standard context, and then if they say, for example, like EPR is they're rolled out and then it's implemented, then it achieves the results intended. But then if we apply the same, same methodology in the more developing country context, and then we sometimes see the limitation in the effectiveness of EPR compared to what it's intended. I think that Pradeepa and I were talking about this when I was in India recently, that the EPR EPR mechanism is working, but no, that mechanism might be only financing the currently practiced disposal methods or disposal practices, which might not be, the up to par. And then that can, that doesn't necessarily, the enhance the social, social conditions, or that doesn't necessarily effectively shift, make the shift towards the circular economy. And also, worse yet, it could potentially give EPR itself a bad name because of the limited results that we see from the implementation. So I just wanted to know, how UNDP, your offices or any other offices, are we doing something about that, the actual standard side, to complement our circular economy practice here. Then the secondly, the Pratibha's the example about women's empowerment and other things that one of those things, right? But in the from the environment side, the second point is it's linked to it's related to the Pratibha and Harpreet's second point on business, but then mine is more specific to the job creation. I just wanted to know how much can we highlight this job creation potential and the skills development and many other things that so that green job opportunities are generated through this shift to circular economy. As a development organization, if we don't push this forward, then if we are just approaching to the circular economy because of the environmental conscience, then it won't be accelerated in the context that we walk in. So if you do any of this, then that would be great if you can share it with others. Thank you.
Sorry, if I could just add in there, and I think my question was also more in the context of UNDP, because in some of these priority countries for the programming, we have business and human rights programming where we're looking at just transition, where we're looking at issues around informal workers, we're looking at the business model and to sort of look at skills, skills in that space. So I think we do have existing programming in most of these countries. So how do we also sort of leverage some of the assets and some of the resources that we have within the organizations? And I think just to kind of speak to the more corporate language in terms of, how we're all encouraged to work as a portfolio and bring different thematic programming together. So I think I'm really interested to know on that. Thanks.
Yeah, perhaps, sorry, Shin, okay, if I can just come in on the questions from Akiko and Harpreet. On the social dimension side, including the promotion of decent work, within, especially among the informal wage sector, within the CE value chain, I think outside UNDP, we've seen models where this has been successfully integrated, where they are able to organize informal wage workers, provided them with social protection, provided them fair remuneration, so basically uplifting their well-being. And I would say that for the new program that we have, the EU-funded one, it's very much integrated. And actually, we got a marching order also from the Environment Secretary, and this is something that has been emphasizing that we really have to look into the inclusion of the informal waste sector, but also how we really uplift their well-beings. But as to the implementation of the EPR program, I was just thinking that because it's not very explicit, they're promoting it, but it's not very explicit in the rules and the policies, even in the, say, audit standards, that it has to be, if you're working with the informal sector, or if you're actually hiring workers, you should be able to ensure that there's decent work environment. You're providing decent working conditions. But maybe that's something also that can be looked into here in the Philippines, that those dimensions will be added also in the audit standards, because that's the only way for the OEs and PROs to actually comply with that. And that can be verified also later on. Because otherwise, they can always claim that they've done this, but you won't be able to see it really in reality. So but on the second part, in terms of how we're really creating jobs, and this is something really that we've been really quite intentional about now, because in the past, most of the focus is really just, okay, we do waste to resource management, but as to actually developing business models that would ultimately create jobs, it was not really as intentional. So in the end, we're not really able to create the actual jobs that we promised to. And this is something that we are working on, especially now under the EU-funded program, that there should be business models established, and we have to ensure that there's access to market, because you won't be able to create jobs and sustain them if you don't actually have access to market eventually. So I guess that's something really that maybe we as UNDP will have to really strengthen or work on. And if there are also good examples from other country office, we'll be happy to actually learn more and also take lessons from.
Pratibha, would you like to add?
Sure. Thank you, Gwen. I think you mostly covered that, and thank you, Harpreet Akiko, for that questions. I don't know, it's a very sort of a broad question, and how much of it I can really answer right now. But just to get a sense, give you a sense of, and these are some very important questions. We have been within country office, and even when Akiko was here, we were discussing a lot about the way the rates of the EPR certificates or EPR generally in the market has been evolving, whether it's really cognizant of the true cost of recycling, meaning, the way recycling happens right now, at least in from the Indian context, a lot of it is been externalized to the waste pickers, to the environments, and nobody is really accounting for those costs. So I think there is certainly a need, and I also know that there are a couple of civil society organization think tanks in India who are now taken on to, put a number on what exactly this the actual cost of EPR would look like, or an actual cost of recycling should look like. But nonetheless, in terms of our own operations, because we have been very cognizant of how the role that informal sector play in the waste management system, especially in a country like India, and I think relevant for a lot of global south countries. We see historically they've been playing a huge role, but due to many factors, this could be because of the kind of policy decision is taken. For instance, if a city goes for a waste to energy incinerator where it is also vying for high calorific value materials, then it is very much competing with recyclers. So while it is seen as a stopgap approach by many cities to process and take huge amount of waste, it also is competing with the recycling systems and with the circular economy systems. And these waste to energy incinerator, they come with huge lock-in period for 25 to 30 years. They mostly run on subsidies that's given by the government, and a lot of these things are now being pushed as part of technology transfer to the growing economic countries like India. And we know that even EU and various countries are now drifting away from such centralized incinerator and waste burning policies, and now moving towards more recycling. So I think this is just one example why waste pickers are losing job. The second is also the privatization of these MRFs and various centers, which is not taking into consideration the integration of waste pickers, in the whole city's waste management plan. So what we are also trying to do is, while there is MRF, and MRF will create certain part of the requirement of waste picker, for instance, in terms of assured wages, living conditions, improvement in living and working conditions. But I think there are various other needs that also needs to be taken care of. For instance, occupational health and safety, access to waste, which must continue for the informal sectors if they need to be part of the program, access to skills, because even given the migratory nature of these workforce, especially in a country like India, there is constantly need for good workforce to continue in the program, but they keep leaving the cities, either addressing to the agrarian needs of when they go back to their various rural pockets or villages, or for various other reasons. Generally, waste sector has been such that it has very easy payoffs. The entry barriers are very low. So we need to have programs which really take into consideration the various needs of the informal sector and design it in a way which is integrated. For instance, whatever program and learnings that we did from our social protection program, now that is being institutionalized into a national policy called Namaste. So this is an acronym for National Action Mechanized Ecosystem for Sanitation Workers. And within this, now UNDP is working with the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment in the country on various issues. So one is the whole enumeration of waste picker. For instance, there is no data in terms of how many people work in the sector. The question I read there in terms of the jobs that's created. So I think we need a robust enumeration database in terms of what is the workforce that's working here. Second, legitimizing this work. A lot of, historically speaking, and even in India, I remember starting working in this space maybe some 13 years ago, and we didn't have so much, conversation around MRF. These places used to be under the bridge or near the corner of the city, and whatever the economic benefits that these MRFs were bringing, they were completely missing from the public imagination, or that they would not see these spaces. So I think more work needs to be done in terms of legitimizing the work of the informal sector, along with ensuring that while they have livelihood opportunities, you also build their community resilience through social protection program, etc. In fact, we did an SROI, a social return on investment of a social protection program, and which we'll be putting out next month. The study came out very well in terms of, why we need more investors and partners to come together for something like an inclusive EPR or inclusive policy that not only support the workers on ground but also create jobs, ensuring the materials is also being managed in the same process. I just add one last part to what Harpreet mentioned. So this is something, again, as part of our partnership with Coca-Cola Foundation, we would be working on responsible sourcing of plastic, wherein we are trying to understand, right from tier 1 recyclers to down the line of the recycling pyramid, how is the plastic recycling movement happening in terms of what are those practices, be it social practice, environmental practices, and this includes, I think, practices around child labor, practices around wages, practices around occupational health and safety, practices around autonomy and the collective bargaining of this waste picker. So, and similarly on gender empowerment, like, because we also know this space is also very gendered. So how do we consciously design program with gender lens in mind? So, I mean, there is so much to do, and I think we are building on and taking on some of the learnings that we have had the program, but I look forward to continuing this conversation. And I think what Hilda mentioned and what, even there was one question on doing some studies on, Afreen also mentioned on doing a study on impacts and results of EPRs in place. I think those are really the way forward, and we will be, taking some of these cues and using it in our current year's program design as well going forward. Sure. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pratibha and Gwen. And both of your inputs are very informative. And just very quickly, I would like to share on EPR, because I think after this session, maybe we need another session specifically focused on EPR. This is one of the top priorities in many countries. And about 2 years ago, we had this EPR workshop actually organized in Bangkok, and we invited some of the experts who really hands-on in developing the EPR policy in Europe. And I am pretty sure that from their experience, we know that, for example, for EPR fee setting, it takes a lot of time. It's a very careful consideration, consultation, and sometimes it's an even political decision instead of based on really scientific data, because eventually it involves a lot of participation from the businesses, also the policy priority of the governments. So this is a really difficult decision to make, but also after careful consideration and long time of consultation and implementation, eventually governments will be able to come up with a good EPR fee setting. And also the ultimate goal is not only to cover the recycling costs, right? Eventually EPR should be able to enhance resource efficiency to prevent unnecessary use of packaging, for example, so resource can be saved. But yeah, let's have another discussion on that. So I think maybe I would just hand over to Alex on his reflection of this session, and maybe some of the things that he would also like to share for next steps. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shin, and of course, Akiko, please also join me. First of all, thanking the speakers and the participants. That was really informative. I've learned quite a few things, but I'm also not from the practice, so that's a good education. But I think even those who work on this stuff for quite a bit have learned a lot of new nuances or things. So For me, actually, there are a couple of reflections. I think it was very good to see different models in terms of MRFs. And I think going forward, perhaps what many other colleagues questions that would have, we had something around ROI and so forth, but I think there is a big thing around kind of economies of scale that perhaps would be good to address, in particular if I think about some places where we work that are not at the scale of Pasig or any serious Indian municipality, which have several millions at least. How we go about economies of scale for MRFs for in places like some of the cities in Nepal. We are doing some work with Dangadi in Nepal, which is a bit much smaller. So perhaps sustainability of some of those MRFs model will depend on that. And I think this is something we would need to look, as many countries are smaller than Philippines or India. I kind of something what was really surprising was a very strong role of governance in terms of actually what and how MRFs evolve, right? Because yes, obviously government set regulatory frameworks and rules, but then we had the whole conversation, right, around incentives. And where the incentives are being driven from. Is it the central government, federal government? Is it the local government? So the whole conversation about how different governance model and MRFs model actually intersect. And if going forward, we might wish to spend a bit of my time to understand those categories so that we can guide country offices across about how they would go for a particular MRF model depending on where their country or jurisdiction is in terms of governance frameworks, decentralization, and this stuff. There is one important thing, and thanks so much for Harpreet for raising it, right, is the question of informal waste speakers and waste speakers as such, which beyond the conditions of work also raises huge questions in terms of economic contribution and benefits that they should be deriving from this process. So this is something that we can look forward perhaps to dive a bit deeper on, and maybe together with our colleagues from the business and human rights team who have expanded network of projects in the region as well. I was a bit, of course, unsurprisingly, but I think it was good that conversation also evolved not just about MRF, but MRF plus. So what actually MRFs can deliver beyond just kind of working as sanitizers of the waste flow, right? And both Pratibha, but also Gwen, obviously with example from Pasig, showed how actually that can lead to additional value, economic value creation, job creation, entrepreneurship, and possibly additional material flows to the local industries. Right, if we take example of that textile enterprise. So I think this is really great example and perhaps a direction we can be much more intentful about as we go forward with our MRF programming. The last bit, and I think it's great that we didn't talk about it because this is a usual UNDP spiel, but was really critical, I think, in both Indian and Filipino case, was the role of UNDP as the convener and as kind of, if you wish, a shape of where this direction of MRF can take, right? The first example, an India example, showed that value in DP wasn't just kind of hiring, putting some people to design an MRF or to fight for some improved conditions there, but actually also to shape how those MRFs could look like, how we connect together the local and the federal government in one place together with the private sector, how this work can contribute to development of the private sector as such, right? So yes, of course, there are a lot of private sector partnership where we want them to bring back and to invest back, but there's actually so much that we can do to help local businesses grow based on it. So I think really, really great to see how UNDP is stepping in those things, even without not doing it always consciously, but now we can articulate also this as part of the offer. Yeah, I'm getting a note from Louisa that Pratibha, you would like to add something, but these are just my reflections, guys, right? So I think it's something for us to explore, as Sheen said, a session additionally on something, but also how we further shape the practical programming on the ground. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. In fact, this is something I wanted to leave a thought with to the group is, and it sounds a very unpopular idea, and at times I'm also hated for sharing this in a lot of forums that I go is. But something that I really want to debunk is the waste to wealth kind of concepts. I mean, having worked and setting up MRFs and been doing that for last 5 years, where we increasingly see the lot of environmental, social, economic benefits that MRF can bring. But I think the fixation at times, all of us also have to make it sustainably viable, financially viable by year one, year two. So I think we really have to do some reality check in terms of what exactly the function of MRF is and what is it that we plan to use for. So because for instance in many MRFs that we studied, around 70%, 60% of waste that comes to the MRF is of very low value or reject waste. And this cannot, we cannot go back and tell to ULBs that we will only function or we will only take your high value waste. And also this is not to say that the high value waste is getting there are leakages. No, it is coming back to the system. Maybe it is, depending upon what kind of policy regulations you have to tap in those material to MRF will really define your financial viability. So I think the material, how long we want to invest in the program, and most importantly, looking at the quantitative benefits and qualitative benefits of MRF, and in the larger scheme of waste management program, and not just from something which will generate money. I think that is one vision we should really have, and I want to live that to all the country offices who are in the process of setting up these MRFs, because we have made some mistakes and there have been some failures also in terms of how some MRFs performed very well as compared to others. And we'd be happy to share in depth also, so there are some very good practices as UNDP wherein our strength lies as convening, but also I think we should not forget that we are not a waste management agency. So given the whole political context of how the waste sector operates, it's really important the strength, the role that UNDP can play in strengthening the local government systems and the overall waste management ecosystem as such. Yeah, I mean, just wanted to add this.
Thank you. Akiko, would you like to add anything?
I mean, it's already 3 minutes over time. Already extended 15 minutes. So, but it was really, really nice. And then I think a lot of questions about to asking about the effectiveness of our current work too. The effectiveness and then replicability, scalability of the MRF, and effectiveness of EPR, the implementation, and then now these are. I think these questions and then some research or analysis will probably lead to even the further programming discussions with partners, because then those that will identify the and then articulate development country specific context. So we cannot just just because EPR policy is already well established, the mechanism and the models are already well established in the European or in the Western part of the the world, does not mean that all we have to do is just now implement the model. And we have to do a lot of calibrations, and I think this is where we need to be very, very detailed and articulate that in order to do this in the developing countries, we have to put different things in a package, and then so therefore that even those projects more linked to the MRF, more linked to the APR, or more linked to the social protection and businesses, that when through this conversation on in the context of circular economy, how can we together make this value addition of UNDP of a whole system bigger than the cumulative value of each project. And then I hope that the circular economy task force and then any other discussions that we are facilitating at the regional level could help government country offices in this kind of discussion, future discussion with your potential partners. And then I think we can also, help each other, and then you can provide more analysis and Gwen, and it's great to see that your project is now, commissioning those analysis about, the return of investment and effectiveness. So we would like to learn more about this, and then Hilda and others who are connected to this global conversation in UNDP, she can maybe point us to the direction of where if other countries are doing something similar, and so that the Philippine country office can learn from some of the examples that's been done in the past. Thank you. Over back to you, Shin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would also like to recognize Hilda's participation in this workshop, and she actually put a question in the chat, but unfortunately I guess we won't have time to deep dive into that. But indeed, it's something that we could look into, right? The effectiveness of EPR, which has already been implemented in the countries in this region, because like Akiko said, what we have been experiencing might be very different from what has already happened in Europe, and that definitely needs more work and time to look into. But let's hope for another session, maybe either on EPR or anything else that colleagues are interested in. And thank you again to Pratibha and Gwen for sharing your experience. And thank you for colleagues who joined this extended session. It's